Cook. I am Councillor for Jericho and Oseney Ward, and I am this evening's chair of the committee, together with Councillor Remen and Councillor Thomas. We are the three councillors who will be deciding this application tonight. I will ask Councillor Thomas and Councillor Remen to introduce themselves. Councillor Thomas.
I'm Councillor Imogen Thomas. I'm the City Councillor for Holywell Ward.
And Councillor Remen.
Hi, good evening. I'm Ajaz Raymond and the Lye Valley Ward Councillor.
Thank you very much. That will then go in no particular order around the rest of the members here and ask them to introduce themselves. Daniel.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Daniel Smith, and I'm legal advisor to the subcommittee this evening.
Richard.
Hello, my name is Richard Masters. I'm a senior licensing compliance officer, and I'll be clerking the hearing and taking the minutes.
Emma.
Emma Thompson, senior licensing compliance officer, here on behalf of the licensing authority.
Sergeant Bowes.
Hey, good evening, Sergeant Neil Bowes, Neighbourhood Policing Sergeant, responsible for delivering neighbourhood policing for East Oxford, Cowley and Wood Farm.
Jennifer.
I'm the technical host for tonight, so you won't hear much from me. Councillor Cook, we've got one person still having connection problems. Okay. So you might get a number later.
No, that's fine. I will carry on with the introductions. Dave Akerman.
Dave Akerman, Environmental Health Officer, Oxford City Council.
Lovely. And then we have Nies. My apologies for the pronunciation.
That's okay. My name's Nia Anubi. I'm a very concerned member of the public. I'll be speaking on behalf of the Heat Restaurant. Thank you.
Thank you. We have Charles Denny.
Good evening, everybody. My name's Charles Denny. I'm licensing consultant to Impact, and we'll be representing Heat Restaurant this evening.
Thank you. And we have another NIE. We have two. NIE's iPad and NIE Anubu. Have you got two devices running there? Lovely. That's okay. We have Ben. Ben, can you unmute?
Hello, I'm here.
And I understand you're observing, but not speaking.
Well, yes, I mean, I also observe.
That's fine, no problems. We have Sam Cook.
Good evening, I'm here as an observer.
Observer, okay. And Vincent. Vincent, are you just here observing? I will assume that you are, unless I hear to the contrary. And Lydia.
Hello, good evening. I'm here representing the Divinity Road Area Residents Association.
No offence, but do we have DRARA as one of the interested parties, or an individual that...
Yes, we do. We submitted a representation.
I can confirm that. That's correct. Yes.
Thank you very much. That's excellent. Okay. It's just so I make sure that I call you all at the right time. Okay. The way we tend to proceed this, and I will try and keep it relatively informal, but first of all, we will get the licensing authority to make a presentation, present the report. There will be an opportunity for us as councillors to ask any questions that we may have, and an opportunity for others to ask any questions that they may have. Then the applicant can make their case to us, and then there'll be an opportunity for us as councillors to ask any questions for officers and for interested parties to ask any questions. And then we have the responsible authorities can make their case and an opportunity to ask questions in the same way. And then the interested parties are able to speak and will be an opportunity to ask any questions of them as well. Right, in which case we will kick off and we will go to the licensing authority. Emma, would you like to kick off?
Yes, please. Thank you, Chair. This licensing subcommittee hearing is convened to determine an application submitted by Heat African Bar and Restaurant Limited for a variation to their existing premises licence in respect to Heat African Restaurant 189 Cowley Road, Oxford. The applicant is seeking to extend the hours for the sale of alcohol and recorded music from 2300 hours to midnight, Sunday to Thursday, and until 0100 hours, Friday and Saturdays. In addition to this, they would like to add the licensable activity of late night refreshment from 2300 hours to midnight, Sunday to Thursday, and 2300 hours until 0100 hours, Friday and Saturday. A copy of the application and the steps that the applicant intends to take to promote the licence and objectives can be found at Appendix 1. We believe that the applicant may look to amend the application, but this can be presented, if applicable, in due course. For reference, the existing premises licence can be found at Appendix 2 of the report, along with the original decision notice for when the initial premises was issued in June 2020, can be found at Appendix 3. The application has attracted representations from both Thames Valley Police and Environmental Health as responsible authorities. These representations can be found at Appendix 4, along with 8 interested parties' comments, which can be found at Appendix 5. All of the representations highlight concerns in relation to how the application may fail to promote the licence and objectives of the prevention of crime and disorder and the prevention of public nuisance. In addition, the application also attracted a total of 20 representations in support of the application. This also included a petition signed by the 25 members of the African Football Group. This can be found at Appendix 6. The subcommittee and all other parties at the hearing will note that there is a mapping report detailing the premises and the surrounding area attached to Appendix 7. Along with this, reference to the relevant sections of the guidance of Secretary of State and the Licensing Authority Statement of Licensing Policy can be found on pages 4 and 5 of the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. At this point, I usually offer the opportunity to ask any questions of the licensing authority. Are there any? I'm not expecting any at this stage. If there aren't, then we move on to the applicant, and for the applicant, this is your opportunity to make your case to us as a committee. Who would like to kick that off for us? Mr. Denny or?
Chair, it should be Mr. Denny. I think you would be expecting.
Okay. Mr. Denny.
He's on mute.
You're on mute, I'm afraid.
Is that better now?
It is. Thank you.
Excellent. Sorry about that. Okay, so I would like to start just in part by reiterating what our licensing officer said, to stress that the name of this premises is the Heat African Restaurant and the company's name is the Heat African Bar and Restaurant. So we are dealing with a variation application for a restaurant and not a bar. This is proven by the current conditions on the license, which only allow alcohol to be sold ancillary to food at the time of ordering, at the time of eating or having eaten, and that intends to remain the case. The current license currently enjoys hours of 12 midday to 2300 hours, 7 days a week. which, having traded as a multi-bar operator for many years under the old Licensing Act as well as the current one, is very similar, apart from Sundays, to the hours that we were enjoying in inverted commas back in the 80s and 90s. One of the purposes of the Licensing Act of 2003 was to offer some flexibility to that, subject, of course, to the promotion of the 4 licensing objectives. So my proposal is very much to explain in a little bit more detail what we're looking to add in terms of permitted hours, but also what we've done through risk assessing that situation of what we can offer in terms of adjustments to the current conditions on the license. The license that we have already has more conditions on it than any other premises that I could find in and around Cowley Road. Indeed, it has more conditions on its license than the O2 Academy. What we propose is an extra 1 hour of trading, including the sale of alcohol, recorded music and late night refreshment from 11 o'clock at night till midnight, Sunday to Thursday, and an extra 2 hours on Fridays and Saturdays. They're so crucial to the successful trading of this operation. In return, we do not want this premises to be anything like a bar on a circuit, where, from my experience, you used to have to admit something like 2,500 people over the course of an evening to maintain a capacity of 500. And this had a huge effect of footfall to and from the premises and associated areas when I was running wet-led operations. When I ran food-led operations, the objective was to get full as early as possible and keep that business in so that they could enjoy themselves without this transient effect of different customers, and everyone could have a good time and leave at the end of the evening in a thoroughly good mood. We are therefore proposing within our original application that no admission or readmission, other than to permit someone to go and smoke outside the front, would be no later than 2200 hours, 10 o'clock at night from Sunday to Thursday. That'd be 2 hours before the supply of alcohol ceases, and no later than 23:30, 11:30 at night on Fridays and Saturdays. Therefore, there'd be no admission to the premises after those hours. What we haven't included in the original application, but I'd like to put forward right now, is that condition 28 on the existing premises license refers to a rear yard area being able to be open until 10 o'clock at night. And this has been, I think, very much at the heart of some of the interested parties' concerns about noise nuisance. We therefore propose that that is cut back to 9 o'clock instead of 10 o'clock, 7 days a week. Furthermore, it'll be monitored for any prospective noise nuisance throughout the time it is occupied by members of the public. I believe there was a visit by several people, including Richard Masters on Friday evening, to look at that rear yard area and examine any breakout of noise from the building, which used to be a bank and has walls averaging 12 to 20 inches of thickness. And I think when Richard gets the opportunity, he'll confirm that there was no discernible noise breakout from the premises, and that is the absolute commitment of the premises going forward. I will also add that a recent complaint for, I think it was the 25th of May relating to noise nuisance, proved to be on a date when the premises wasn't even trading, and therefore has been confirmed as being false. It is a unique restaurant. It offers African cuisine, African music, atmosphere or vibe, as people like to call it these days, and therefore a total experience for a night out. Okay, we're not seeking for people to come for 20 minutes, half an hour, have a snack, have a drink and move on. We want them to see this as a destination venue. It only has a capacity of 100 persons at any one time. This is in stark contrast to many premises on Cowley Road, going up to a capacity of, I think, 5,000 for the O2 Academy. Within the premises, there are just under 70 covers. Current permitted hours are virtually in line, as I said, with previous legislation. And from my experience, it very much worked as an essential element of the business plan to achieve later hours to operate as a destination venue. If those extended hours for an hour or two beyond the old permitted hours of 2300 were not provided, the business failed. Our objective, therefore, is to encourage people to come and remain at the premises for something like 2 to 3 hours and enjoy the facilities, which will be unique African cuisine, unique African entertainment with alcohol auxiliary to both. Other premises in the vicinity all have advantageous hours over Heat Restaurant at the moment, such as Cowley Restaurant, currently having hours exactly the same as what we are applying for, Istanbul having a license till 2 AM, and even ordinary wet lead bars having a license until at least midnight. I don't need to go into the details of O2 Academy. It's not in any way a similar operation to Heat, but I believe it's until 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. So premises of Heat's nature rely heavily on Fridays and Saturdays and therefore need to operate at their full potential at that time. As I mentioned previously, those restaurants, some of which I ran, called Bar Meds back in the late 90s and early 2000s, a Mediterranean cafe style operation, literally broke even as a business around about 10 o'clock at night on Friday. Therefore, it had the remaining hours of Friday and Saturday to make a profit. Therefore, the premises does need to be able to operate at its full potential in order to provide the service that customers want, but also be a successful business in these current challenging times. The premises has many, many conditions on it already, almost as if the conditions were agreed as a precursor to later licensing in the future, albeit it was under statutory saturation policy at the time of the original application. We'll all know that the current circumstances is that that is not in place, but may well return. The opportunity here is not to grab a little chink in the armour and get our late hours during that space. It is more to enforce the promotion of the licensing objectives and run the operation to its true potential once we hope we get to step 4 in 4 weeks' time. Since the current license has been granted, which is February in 2020, because of the pandemic, it has only been able to operate just under 6 months of the 15 months available. Therefore, it's obviously making a loss. It's also been very difficult to build a reputation. However, it has at all times conformed with government requirements in terms of the pandemic. And Mr. Halilu has done everything he can to build a reputation for what he stands for as a African ethnic restaurant and entertainment venue. He is both the managing director and designated premises supervisor for the premises, so is and has to be a passionate and professional businessman in terms of meeting not only his aims as a business, but also to meet the desires, requirements, and obligations as a licensed premises, both to his local community and to responsible authorities. He's totally committed to that aim. So in conclusion, we do propose that the rear yard area will be closed at 2100 hours, 7 days a week, and will be monitored whenever it is open to prevent any form of noise nuisance. For those not familiar, the premises already has a condition that no music can be played outside the premises, and being a bank with very thick walls, I promise you, music played inside the premises doesn't get out. There will also be a latest admission times of 2200 and 2330 according to the time of week to encourage guests to make their destination night out, arrive early and enjoy their evening with us. Mr. Halilu is responsible and accountable for compliance with licensing law, obviously as the DPS as well as the managing director. He has 100% commitment to achieve that. He also wants to ensure that he provides a welcome addition to East Oxford's nightlife as restrictions from the pandemic gradually recede. In summary then, this premises aims to showcase African cuisine and culture by being welcome to all can contribute very positively, given a level playing field, to the development of multiculturalism in Oxford and the promotion of integration with Oxford's residents and student communities. This can be seen by the 20 representations in favour of the application, and therefore I commend the variation is granted along with the conditions that we propose. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Denny. We now move on to questions from councillors. I'll kick off if I may. You said the venue had a capacity of 100, and then you said it had a capacity of 70 covers. Are those figures correct? And what are the 30 people doing that are not eating?
So up until 10 o'clock currently, or 9 o'clock, we propose in the future, they could be in the rear yard area. They are also permitted to stand at the premises while waiting for their table. And obviously there'll be natural movement of a few people to and from toilets and such like. But 70 is the sensible level of number of seats. Therefore, it is highly unlikely it'll actually reach its full capacity of 100 at most times.
And how many services do you do of an evening?
In terms of turning over the cover?
Yes.
In all truth, I would anticipate in the future, and certainly the situation currently, is that the tables would generally turn over only once, because we would be encouraging people to stay at those tables and be served by waiter service throughout their stay.
And you say you've been operating for 6 months. Of those 6 months, how much of that time has been operating as one would expect to define normally?
Frankly, none.
Okay.
There have always been some restrictions in relation to the pandemic and the impact on capacities, people being outside, inside, socially distanced, and so on. Obviously, we would support whatever the government require in the future, irrespective of what is granted today.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Thomas or Councillor Raymond, do you have any questions?
Yes, Ajaz. Going forward from the covers to the capacity. So, for example, on Sunday to Thursday at 10 o'clock, there's no more admissions. Are you proposing at that time that you'd only have 70 people in the restaurant as a maximum? Because you won't be having anybody walking around, they'll probably leave or they've eaten already.
Once people have eaten, they're welcome to stay. But you're absolutely correct. We will not be seeking or allowing new admissions after that time.
Okay. And the backyard, is that just used for smoking at the moment? How do you use it at the moment, or in the limited time that you've had?
Okay. Over the course of the time since the license has been granted and operated within the restrictions of the pandemic, it did become the outdoor area where people could socialise, have something to eat and drink, besides inside, but with no music. As a result, I think it's fair to concede that it got quite noisy at times and maybe led to a few complaints. But the proposed alteration to the condition on the licence will put this to an end, because at 9 o'clock it will be emptied and closed.
Okay. The covers then, 70, you've been serving people outside, obviously, because of the pandemic. Is that 70 covers including the ones you had outside, or is that just inside the restaurant?
That's inside the restaurant.
Thank you.
Imogen.
Yeah, I was just thinking, once the garden is closed at the proposed time of 9 o'clock, what potential noisy activity could come after that from staff? For example, clearing up or taking bins out, that sort of thing.
I saw on one objection that there was some noise quite late at night in terms of voices of staff working together and cleaning out refuse and such like. We do have some conditions on the licence relating to that activity, and we're more than happy to comply with whatever required to prevent any noise nuisance at that time.
Okay, unless there are any further questions from councillors. Officers, are there any questions of the applicant from yourselves?
No, thank you, Chair.
Okay, are there any questions from, sorry, Daniel?
Yes, one question for me, Chair. You have on your current licence, as it stands, recorded music. That's unusual in my experience for a restaurant, which usually only require background music, which is not licensable. I just wondered whether the volume of the music which you currently operate as recorded music is monitored at all, and is it operating that music at the level which you do a required element of the way in which you operate, or is background music something which would be sufficient?
Okay, thank you for that. With many continental style bars, including Africa, including Spanish, including Italian, and so on. People go out to eat as part of their night out. So it's not exclusively a restaurant premises. And therefore, the objective of Heat Restaurant is to provide the complete experience of music to enjoy, an atmosphere to enjoy, as well as food to eat. And of course, the reason why we're all here is to have some alcohol as well. It is very commonplace throughout the world that those premises increase the volume of their music as the night goes on, particularly when they approach capacity. This premise is only ever going to have 100 people in it, so the music doesn't have to be deafening, but the intention would be not what I imagine you're referring to as background, but what I used to call as foreground music. People can still talk, but the music is very much there to enjoy as well. And the premises does have DJs at weekends.
Thank you.
Okay, any further questions from any of the officers or responsible authorities?
If I may, Chair. Yes, if you're going to have DJs as part of your usual setup, and notwithstanding you're going to close the garden earlier, if there's any need to go out during trade by members of staff for whatever reason, I'd advise maybe a cut-off then. If you're going to play at a volume that is louder than a general background in a restaurant, which is what Heat trades as according to its license conditions currently, then that would certainly be a further measure to prevent any noise breakout disturbing the neighbours who are very close to the rear area, meters away in fact.
The public area has got a corridor that goes through to the rear yard area. It also passes an area that was previously the vault of the bank. Because the sound levels will be monitored inside, that will include a check that there is no breakout either from the front or the rear of the premises. The only time when there'll be a break from the building being sealed will be people coming in and out of the premises at the front. In terms of staff, they would only be needed to operate in the rear yard area in terms of waste management and such like, very briefly at the end of trading. And if it was felt that that was better left until the following morning, that could be achieved.
I would probably support the latter there, to be honest, having experience of bars bottling up late at night and causing nuisance.
Sure.
Okay.
The last thing we want to do is cause unnecessary nuisance, especially to local residents.
Okay, are there any further questions from responsible authorities, either the police, council officers, before we move on to interested parties? Are any of the objectors wishing to ask any questions? And I would say questions rather than comments to Mr. Denny. If there are not, and I'm not seeing any, we will then move on to the responsible authorities case. Sergeant Bowes.
Yeah, good evening once again. When the renovations of the old bank to turn the premise into the Heat restaurant as it is now were first undertaken, my team noticed some insignias on the window which identified that this was going to be a sports bar / karaoke bar, and that was supplemented by some social media posts from, we believe or suspect, the business, which are included in documentation for you to review. As the applicant has already alluded to, they've not been in a position to trade normally, as we would expect in any other time, owing to the pandemic since they've commenced their operation. Part of us having a successful nighttime economy and promoting the licensing objectives is for us to test licensees and make sure licensees are responsible for compliance with their license. Unfortunately, through no fault of their own, they've not had anywhere near the number of people through their doors. They've not been able to operate to the full extent of their licensable hours, and government conditions have impeded what they would like to do. Therefore, the business is untested on a licensing issue. Coupled with that, with the national restrictions that we've seen, the population of the city has been significantly reduced over the last 6 to 9 months with various lockdowns and predominantly students not being able to return to university and being advised to stay at home. In Oxford, we see a swelling of the population on a normal year of about 40,000 people, owing to the attraction of both universities, and we've not had that for the past 12 months or so now. In the evidential bundle, we've provided you with some documentation following some research into the nighttime economy. This details that nearly 50% of all offences that we deal with related to the nighttime economy occur on a Friday and Saturday. And the busiest period for criminal offences to take place is between 0100 and 0400. In fact, 14% of all offences take place within that time frame. And they're largely centred around the city centre and the Cowley Road, and specifically on the Cowley Road, between the O2 Academy and the Cowley Retreat, and Heat Bar and Restaurant is smack bang in the middle of that. When the application was lodged, as the applicant has already referenced, the special saturation policy was in place, and that, owing to the pandemic, has now elapsed. But we do need to be aware of the cumulative impact of having more people coming out into East Oxford at times that other businesses further up and down the Cowley Road are also being required to remove patrons. So there is a cumulative impact by allowing them to operate potentially until 0100 on a Friday and Saturday. That will then sort of tip their customers into the peak demand for both us and the NHS. There's nothing further from myself. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillors, do you have any questions for Sergeant Bowes? No. Officers of the council, do you have any questions for Sergeant Bowes?
None from the licensing authority, thank you, Chair.
And none from me, Chair.
Thank
None
you.
from Ryan Health.
Thank you. We now move on to if there are any questions from either the objectors or the supporters of this application. Please wave a hand or speak now. Any questions? If there aren't, we will move on to the responsible authority. No, sorry. Other responsible authorities. So in that case, we'll move on to Dave Akerman.
Thank you, Chair. As per our bundle,
I'm afraid you appear to have frozen there. Hopefully you will come back shortly.
Chair, I fear we might have lost.
Yes.
Akerman.
I think we do have to give him an opportunity to come back, and I'm not seeing any real opportunity to change the order in which we hear people. Hopefully you will join us shortly. And we'll give him an opportunity to do so.
Yes, I'm afraid, Chair, he has dropped out.
Okay.
I agree with you, Chair, that it's not ideal to take evidence out of order, and it's entirely a matter for you. But the procedure can be varied. It's not you're not tied to it. You can move on to other parts and come back to Dave if he rejoins us.
Let's give him a minute or so. If he does, if Jennifer can keep a weather eye out for him coming back in. I I think we probably need to move on and wait for Dave to come in. Perhaps we could hear from some of the interested parties. If we're not able to get Dave, no, it doesn't look as though we are.
Chair, I'm not seeing him being able to rejoin at the moment.
Okay. Well, of the people who I have down as interested parties, we have Lydia Matthews, Samantha Cook, Nii Anubi, and Dagmara Miliweska. I don't think the latter has joined us just yet. So perhaps we move to Lydia, if you're willing to address us now.
Yes, thanks very much. This objection was put in by the Divinity Road Area Residents Association on the grounds primarily of public nuisance, and it's done on the basis of the cumulative impact on the number of businesses on that area part of the Cowley Road. As detailed in our objection, there are a number of late night alcohol serving venues in that area. The cumulative impact on the residents of Drara is significant, and allowing the venue to stay open for these extended hours will simply increase that. We've seen sustained antisocial behaviour and noise nuisance from the Cowley Road in general, and we're very concerned by the fact that adding another late night venue with such late night opening will act as a further draw to traffic onto the Cowley Road and have a serious impact both on the Divinity Road area residents but also on the neighbours that live very nearby.
Thank you very much. I think, probably ought to have the other interesting parties speak as well. So, Nii Anubi, do you wish to address us?
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Beg your pardon. Sorry, I was on mute. If I just give you, how long have I got? So, you know, I try and put this together.
we would encourage you to be as brief as possible.
I will endeavour. I will endeavour.
That you've already submitted or already covered in the report.
I'm a little older, so I'll take a bit more time. You know, you'd have to bear with me a bit.
No, that's fine.
Essentially, if I start off by saying that, as I understand, one of the key things that I see is really from the police about public nuisance, and then from the environment and health in terms of further aggravating potential, you know, issues. Now, what I couldn't get at, and it's really disturbed me a little bit, is that I've lived in Oxford for the last 35, 36 years, and I've never seen anything like this proposed or actually trading in Oxford. And I welcome this particular restaurant with open arms, because it hits at the core of who and what I am. I'm African as well as British. I'm proud to be both. Therefore, this restaurant is key to my very existence in Oxford. It's important. I go there all the time. I enjoy the food. I enjoy the ambience. I've never seen anything remotely like you know, causing any issues. Okay, I'm not there 24 hours. So I couldn't quite comment on what happens when I'm not there. But I think that I couldn't quite see any empirical evidence in what's being claimed as aggravating the circumstances because of this one restaurant. What's disturbing to me is that if you take the aggregate of premises on the Cowley Road, what is this one restaurant going to add to, in marginal terms, in terms of potential issues? I can't quite see it. And if you want to prove that point, then you need to be a bit more scientific about it. You know, you actually need to measure the current activity where it's at, and then reflect the impact of the marginal increase due to this one restaurant. I would have to say this is just infinite. It's just non-existent in relative terms. If you're carrying out any statistical analysis, you'd simply have to agree that the knock-on effect of this one restaurant is simply not credible. And if it is, and I'm not saying it isn't, please show the empirical evidence and don't simply say it's likely to cause, because likely to cause and to deny the opportunity for this restaurant to actually maximize its potential, I think it's unfair. It's against natural justice. And quite frankly, I think tested in law, because you've given permission to a lot of others all along Cowley Road, the same conditions, and you're going to deny this to Heat Restaurant, I think is simply unacceptable. And I think can be challenged. I'm not a lawyer, I'm not going to pretend to be one, but it just seems to me that you're not looking at this from pure empirical evidence. It simply is conjecture. To me, that's what it feels like. You're guessing it's likely to increase the problems on Cowley Road. I would have to argue this is not the case at all. It can't be, because it's too marginal simply to cause that many problems for yourselves. The other thing that I couldn't quite understand is the complaints from Divinity Road, because Divinity Road is just a few streets removed. I'm just wondering where the sort of impact on Divinity Road comes from a distance point of view. And I feel, especially when you take into account that some of the complaints that have been made and found to be untrue, it seems to me that there are probably other motives here, which I can't prove, so I wouldn't say they are. I don't know if they are, but it seems to me that there are some objections that are going on here that really we cannot ascertain. And it seems to me it's just a feeling we don't want this. And I think if that's the case in Oxford, I'd be very disappointed. I've never faced anything like that in Oxford in my 35 years. I think it's a very tolerant community, a very understanding community, and it's a traveling community. I think a lot of people in Oxford, like myself, know other parts of the world. So when we see opportunities like this, we welcome it with open arms. I use this restaurant quite a lot with my family. We enjoy it. We think the lack of understanding of how the music relates is something else. There's an explosion in African music around the world now today. And that's very much part of what his restaurant's about. It's about educating us about what's going on. Believe me, before the pandemic, there were African artists coming from Africa to perform in London. The O2 Arena is packed full. That's part of the ambience. That's part of what this restaurant offers. It's very different. It's very unique. And I think Oxford would be the worst if you couldn't allow this restaurant to flourish. And especially in the circumstances it finds itself now with the pandemic and the restrictions, to deny this opportunity would be a big shame. What I would say in support of you as the authorities is that, yes, the circumstances needs to be monitored. I don't think you can just leave carte blanche and do what they like. No, I think that would be wrong. I think it needs to be monitored. I think they need to have a license that gives them conditions. That's fine. But I'm pretty certain that these conditions would be met. And if they are not met, it's not, I'm a member of the public. I wouldn't like to disturb other people who live around the area through this. But I think to deny them in the first instance without clear scientific empirical evidence would be criminal. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Newby. I mean, please rest assured that we judge every application on its merits at the time. And yes. Going back to the evidence, one of the problems here is that because we haven't opened normally, some of that evidence that we might have used is not there, sadly. But anyway, welcome back, Dave Akerman. I think what we probably ought to do is invite Samantha Cook to speak, and then we'll have some questions of the interested parties, and then we'll perhaps move back to Dave, if that's okay. So, Sam, would you like to address us?
Good evening. Yes.
And can I encourage those who have got the microphones on to turn them off if they're not speaking? Thank you.
Yes, I sent an email explaining my concerns for not being able to open the restaurant until later hours. And I think I explained that quite clearly. However, I just want to agree with me. I felt that he made a very reasonable suggestion. And I would like to say that I agree wholeheartedly with him and what he raised.
That's fine. Thank you very much, Sam, if that's all you want to say. Please stay on with us. There's an opportunity for any questions. We'll kick off with councillors. Imogen or Ajaz, do you have any questions to the interested parties?
No, I don't have any questions.
No, me neither.
You're still on mute, Colin.
Sorry, any questions from officers as regards
none from me, Colin.
Interested parties?
No, thank you, Chair.
Okay.
Nothing from me, Chair.
Okay, in which case, unless there's any other questions, we'll move back to Dave. Welcome back. Would you like to carry on with what you were saying, and we will perhaps have some questions for you?
So I don't know what point you lost me, Chair. I think my final comment before you probably lost me was actually I'm heartened that of the conditions that the applicants put forward, and actually that will go a long way to mitigating the concerns of environmental health. Our chief concern is that breakout. I would rather have some kind of lobby system at the front, as you get with most bars, in all fairness, so that noise from the front would be mitigated equally, because we have lots of problems with other premises over in the city from noise when you leave the premises, just washing out because you've got a DJ set right by your door. Not sure that's a condition I can put forward, but yeah, I'm quite happy with what they put forward. I think that will mitigate my concerns in the main.
Sorry, just on that point, are you proposing that there is an electronic cutout if someone goes out the back, that cuts the sound, which we have had?
That sort of devices, that is a condition that we have seen on some licenses in the past, which is quite useful. Same as you have a fire exit in some clubs that kills the sound when you have to leave. Yeah, something like that, I think. Not viable would be a good useful way of controlling breakout.
Yeah, not on the front door.
No,
I don't think that would work.
No, unless you've got a lobby system, that's the only way you're going to get further mitigation at the front. And if that's not doable, I can't think of the way the premises is set out from the front off the top of my head. But yeah, the back door is the most pressing issue, really.
Okay. Okay. We now move on to any questions for Dave. Imogen or Ajaz, do you have anything?
No, thank you.
Thanks, thank you.
Officers of the council?
No, just to help Dave out, I did visit the premises with Richard on Friday night. There is an electronic doors as you go into the premise that obviously open as and when people come towards it. That is the only front entrance other than the big, obviously old bank doors, which quite preferably wouldn't need to be shut or couldn't be shut because they'd be quite heavy to reopen. But there is an electric door just behind from the old bank that is open and shut as people turn it. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Daniel?
Yes, one question for Dave. Comment was made upon the thickness of the walls of the premises, it being an ex-bank, and how this would be adequate noise insulation. Is that your opinion?
The only major issues with breakout are weaknesses in the structure, which are usually doors and windows or vents for any mechanical device, like ventilators you've got going. So in the main, I would agree with that. The problem in the past has definitely been that separation of outside space, or people going out into the outside space, hearing music that's being played in the restaurant area, then goes out. So yeah, in the main, I'd agree. If you've got very thick walls, you will get a pretty decent attenuation of noise. It's the weaknesses that you've got to be more aware of, and that's always doors, windows. That's why we ask for sound lobbies, because you've got that double separation.
Okay,
again, sorry, Daniel.
Can I ask a supplementary on that?
Yeah, by all means. Yeah.
That's in relation to the structure of the building. Do you have any comment on noise from just people being outside and eating in that backyard.
If that's going to be controlled to, I mean, my understanding was it wasn't an eating area originally, it was just a gathering where people would drink and do whatever, which tends to be noisier than a restaurant setting. If we're going to shut that at 9 o'clock, I mean, from a nuisance perspective, the longer we go into an evening, the more likely people to be affected. So 9 o'clock is a very reasonable time to shut that down. So I don't have any concerns for that rear area if we're going to shut that at 9 and it's not a free-for-all area and you're not getting the music drifting through.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Is there any problems with sound being transferred through the solid wall, as it were? I mean, I know the walls are thick, but sound travels much better through solids than it does through liquid.
Sound does, and the lower frequencies will tend to, I mean, people noise, you're talking conversations, and the high end of most music or mid-range music won't go through your standard sort of brick wall. It's the low end frequency, but bearing in mind that
it's the low end that I'm worried about.
Yes, yeah, and quite rightly, Chair. If we're going to have that system where the back doors are shut and controlled, and it's at a reasonable time, we shouldn't get that level of back. And that's something that if you're going to monitor your music as a condition, I can probably give you some advice on that in terms of frequency levels or limiters or other equipment which would help you achieve that condition. So that's certainly out there if you end up with conditions that added to the license regarding a limiter or some sort of setting of noise levels. That's something I could help you with.
No, it's the immediate neighbours.
Immediate neighbours. Yes, I think
the party
wall should keep you reasonably safe from that if there's no breakout from open windows and doors.
Okay. Any further questions to Dave from anyone? If there isn't, we then move on to, we've just had the interested parties and we've had an opportunity to ask any questions of them. Unless there are any further questions of the interested parties, we now move to closing submissions. And first of all, we kick off with the applicant. Mr. Denny, is there anything you'd like to say by way of closing comments? Mr. Denny, I'm afraid you're still muted. So we'll...
There we go. It should be me again.
Yeah, just start from the top again.
I would like to conclude just by giving you the headlines that I gave in the application earlier, but also just quickly, while they're fresh in people's minds, pick up a couple of comments that were made during other parts of the meeting. From my experience, good management practice in terms of noise nuisance comes very much from the premises working with the community and the police and other responsible authorities rather than against them. And I think this is, as primarily a restaurant and a premises offering a unique vibe, it is perfectly acceptable to propose that we have a winding down period towards the closing time of midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning. Not only does that mean that people do calm down before they go out if they've had a particularly exciting evening, it also means people leave more gradually because it tempts people to look at the watch thinking about ordering an Uber or whatever it might be. So if we had a winding down period in terms of music from about 20 minutes before closing, I think those 80 to 100 people who have been in the premises at peak times, particularly Friday and Saturdays, would actually probably be leaving 10 to 20 at a time every 5 to 10 minutes from, say, on a Friday, Saturday night, 12:30 through to 30 minutes after closing, 1:30. So the effect in terms of cumulative effect on noise, on the number of people on Cowley roads potentially going to other premises that are open later than us, even with these permissions, would really be negligible. And that was backed by one of our representatives in support earlier on. It is a unique offer. It's a very exciting offer for Oxford to have an African cuisine themed restaurant with the vibe of the music that is transcending the world in terms of an excellent offering, different to the constant bump that we get in most nightclubs. My son is a DJ for a company called Deltic, and he plays African music once a week, and it's attracted something like 100 more people in the venue compared with previously. So the music has a popularity, it has a demand. It also sounds just as good at medium levels as high levels. And for 100 people, I really don't expect us to have serious issues of noise nuisance in the future. So we do commend a grant on the basis of the fact that this premises needs those later hours in order to meet customer demand, but also be an economically viable premises. And we really do hope you take both into account, as well as recognise that we have a highly responsible and passionate company director and DPS in charge. Thank you.
Thank you. We now move on to responsible authorities. Sergeant Bowes, is there anything you wish to say in summing up?
Just to surmise again, our position is that we've got largely an untested venue through, arguably, you know, and quite rightly through no fault of their own. So they've not been able to run at full capacity since they've been open. So we've not been able to see the operation in full swing. Coupled with that, the cumulative impact of more people out in and around East Oxford late at night, which then tips, certainly at the weekend, those patrons into sort of the riskier hours in terms of violent offences sort of surrounding the nighttime economy. And obviously Heat Restaurant is situated sort of within the main hotspot of the Cowley Road when we look at the crime data. That's everything for me. Thank you.
Thank you. We now move on to Dave Akerman.
I have nothing further, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. And then we move on to the interested parties. Mr. Anubi, is there anything you wish to say by way of summing up? You need to unmute.
Not getting used to
it. A lot better that way.
Yeah, right. The idea that, just to finish off what the complaint from or the potential for the police, is that the chances are the people that will actually use this restaurant, like myself, already use Cowley Road. It's not an extra. It's not going to create an extra number of people, because I think the people that are going to use this are already circulating within Cowley Road. It just gives them a further option, which is not huge in relative terms. So the assertion that it's going to create more problems, it simply can't be credible. It's the same number of people, so the problem that's going to be created as a whole in Cowley Road will remain almost exactly the same, virtually exactly the same in relative terms. Because if you take, say, 1,000 people, if you get an extra 2 or 3 problems, it's just a problem that's there as a result of people being there already. So this is not going to create, this is not new people coming in from elsewhere to use this restaurant. Is really about people having a choice to do something else on Cowley Road. Thank you.
Thank you. Sam Cook, do you wish to say anything in summing up?
I have nothing further, thank you.
Thank you. And Lydia Matthews, do you have anything?
No, nothing further. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. In that case, we'll ask you to wait briefly whilst we as a committee deliberate, and I will ask Jennifer to put you in the waiting room whilst we discuss the application. Thank you.